All right, and we are back. So in the last session, what we did was we mapped out this image upload field, and we kind of what we did. We didn't actually do any development, but we went through and we kind of figured out how we're going to code it. So figured out just kind of high level how it's going to work, how we're going to store files, how like where we're going to store files, like what mechanism we're going to use to store the actual files to a disk, and then like how those files will be uploaded, and just kind of like the step-by-step process there. And so this was just kind of a way to kind of create some rough notes around some of the thoughts. As you see here, it's not very organized, and it's kind of the point is, for some things it's like you don't really need to take so much time to make your notes clean, because it's really just something that you're jotting down as you're building it, almost like it's like a disposable scratch notes. Whereas some of the other documents that I put together is more organized, and I spend a little bit more time because it kind of pays dividends to kind of clear things up and make sure that things make sense. But anyhow, what we'll work on today is setting up this image upload field. So I'm just going to open up where I have all my field types listed, and so we got the bulk of them set up, and what we're going to focus on today is like the image field, and then if we have time we might tackle the images and the file files, but really the goal is just the image field. So I'm going to just go ahead and open up my environment here. And then I was using Figma to kind of create some, still on next launch, to create some very rough mock-ups. I just kind of wanted to have some kind of idea of what I'm building. Of course, the actual end result of the UI might be a little different than what my mock-up has, but the goal is to kind of put the major elements in place, just so we kind of know what we're working with. And so like this right here, this is kind of what the image field is going to look like. So the idea is that these are just different variations of the image field. So like this one here is just the field with no help text. This one is the field with the help text. And this is what it's going to look like once you have the image selected. So by default, it's just going to look like this, where you have the field name and then a button. Once you click the button, you select the file uploads. It'll show like this with a little thumbnail of the image. You can click to remove it or click to upload a new one. And this is just another variation of that with the help text in place there. So that's kind of what we're thinking. So that's going to be the idea. We're going to create a new field type. It's going to have the field name, a button. So we'll start there. So just going to go ahead and open up, let's see here, npm run hot, get my scripts running, get a new tab running here. All right. So I'm not sure if we actually have the image field type added yet. Oh, we do. Perfect. So we have image. And yeah, really right now all the options we're going to have is you're going to have the name and the help text. So the name, we'll just call it image field. Nothing too original there. What do we have here? So something's already using port 8080. All right, sorry about that. So the yeah, for some reason I'm having an issue here with the port 8080 and let me figure out what's being used there. Webpack. Huh. I wonder if it didn't die from last time. Let's just go ahead and kill it. All right, looks like that's going. Cool, so let's go ahead and add a new image field. Image field. Add some help text. Just something random there. Save that, go to our pages, create a new page. So our image field is going to show up here. We haven't coded that yet. So we will go to our CRUD form, and here where we're displaying the fields, we're going to add a new one. And I'm not exactly sure yet how it's going to look. I'm thinking I probably want to use a form control just to have the spacing and everything consistent with all the other fields on that page. So we'll start there, maybe add a few of the elements and kind of see where we're at. So here would be field type is image. We want a for control full width. Well, we can keep the label and we can keep the help text. And here we're just going to put a placeholder button for now. Select image. So let's see where that brings us. So we have image field. It looks like it's a price. button is not defined, so we gotta import that. All right, so the elements are here. They don't look very nice. Let's see what options we have with material UI. So let's see here. Just kind of take a look at how these form controls work. So we have form control, input label, and label has to be foreign input. So the form control label looks like it's being used for like radio switch checkbox. Just kind of curious to see what that looks like. And I'm wondering if we can, oops, that's the button. We don't want the button, we want, let's check out checkbox. It's a form control label and you pass the control. So I'm guessing that's something where maybe it wraps the checkbox and the label. Yeah, so the label kind of wraps everything. Just wondering, like, what if we put it inside a block level element? Maybe it'll separate itself out. Okay, that's just weird. Input label. Let's see what options we have for the input label. Okay, I am just kind of curious just to kind of figure out how this relationship works between the label and the input. Yeah, I guess it's kind of the thing with using something like Material UI is you have these components that you can use, but then if you're kind of wanting to create something custom, it's a little bit tricky to get it looking kind of consistent with the rest of the UI. Just want to see what kind of the default example looks like, and then maybe we can modify it from there. Oh, that was importing the wrong thing. All right. So that's kind of what it looks like there, but we're using like a different type of input. I think we're using like the outlined input. Yeah, labels off. And I'm not sure why. I mean, not that it really matters because we're not going to be using an input. I'm just kind of trying to see how that works. What happens when we use a label without a form control? So this will be field.name. Just like a big text. And another thing too is I'm really not too concerned with this with the styles at this point, because I'm not even sure if we're going to be using like this style of input. And so I think for now, I'll just kind of focus on the functionality, just making sure it works, because we'll be kind of going through, once everything's kind of set up, you know, we have our collection builder, we have our CRUD, we have like all the parts set up. Then I'll be like doing another pass through and kind of making it look nice, because I mean, even looking at the sidebar, I mean, that just looks ugly, of course, and that's going to change. But the goal is not to make it look pretty at this point, but make it work. So yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. We'll just show a basic input. We'll have a button, select file. All right, and then we just want a different variant to make it look more like a button. So I think the type of variant we'd use is the contained one. All right, yep, so we got our button. And I think before we go any further, we actually want to extract this into a separate component. And the reason why is we're gonna have like this image is gonna, or this image file field or form field, it's gonna like handle uploading files to a server, and so it's gonna have to kind of have some of its own state. So like when you select the file, it's gonna have to keep like the selected file in state. It's gonna have to keep track of like the progress of that file upload. And then it's going to have some like functionality, like its own functions for handling that upload, like making that XHR request. And so I don't want to pollute my CRUD form here with a bunch of stuff that's just for the file upload field or the image upload field. And so I'm going to go ahead and break it out into its own component. And I think also in the future, we're actually going to break out a lot of these components into their own files anyways. I just didn't do it yet because there's really no need to. I wanted to kind of lay out all the different field types in my form before I kind of went through and then started like refactoring. So what we'll do here is we'll just put it inside CRUD. We'll add a new file called image field. So this will export default image field, and we're going to copy what we have here and return it. No, I'm missing that function. There we are. And then here, what we're going to do is import it. So this will be image field. My auto completion. Yep, there we go. Image field, and then we're going to pass the actual field as a prop. Oops. Yeah, field is equal to field. So here, instead of just field, we'll do props dot field dot name. And with any luck, it should really just be showing what we had previously. Input label is not defined, right? We gotta import these. All right, there's our image field. Cool, so what's gonna happen is once we, you know, when you click on the button, it's gonna bring up like that window to select the file. And I'm kind of gonna be basing this off of a previous prototype that I built. It kind of already has a lot of functionality built in, and it uses axios already. And so we'll be able to just kind of copy what we have and just modify it to work for our app, because here it uses Vue. So, the other thing too is this uses like a file input. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? Instead of using a button for now, I'm just going to use an input field. Kind of see what that looks like. I wonder if the mature UI has any. Oh, no, it has no styling for the button. Well, I'm also curious, what if we used a material UI text field and pass a type of file? Is that even allowed? I mean, kind of looks a little more like what we're expecting. Let's see if we add a label, props.field.name. Yeah, that's all messed up. Yeah, so we won't worry about that for now. I think we'll just use a regular file input field, and then we'll worry about styling once we get to the styling part. So here, I think we can listen for the on input event, I believe. Take the event, and for now, we're just going to console.log e, just to kind of see what we get. And let's see here, do I have any? Now let's upload one of these NFT images that we've been working on. All right, so select the file, and then we see here it has the event. And so what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to pull information about that selected file and send that information over to the to our backend. And I think, I don't even remember exactly how it pulls the value. Let's see here. So at input, we're doing e upload file. So upload file takes in the event. Okay, so the file is e.target.files, and I guess it's an array of files. So for this one, this image field, it's only going to accept one file. In the future, we'll have some that accept multiple. Files, there it is. So this is our file list. Currently, it's empty. So e.target.files. So now we see there's one in there. We have file name. Cool. So we can use that in order to send that request to our server. So it looks like what we can do is we can create a new form data object. In that form data, we'll append a file, and then we'll post this form data using axios to our backend. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. So on input, handle on input. Function handle on input takes the event. So our file is equal to e.target.files0. That's the first one in that array. And for now, const file. For now, let's go ahead and just console log it file, just to make sure we got it correctly. Console, right, console.log. All right, we got our file, cool. So the other thing too is we got to bring in our axios package. So npm install axios. I guess technically we can use fetch. I don't know, I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm more comfortable using axios. Oops. All right. So we'll have const form data is equal to new form data. Form data dot append file, and we'll pass in that file. Yeah, so that's the name of the field we want in there, and then the value of it. And then we can do axios dot post, and this is going to be route admin dot files dot store. What we're going to do, and that's our route. And then for the second parameter, I believe that's our data, but looks like it has to be, yeah, we might have to include some additional headers here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy what we have here. Second parameter is our params. Callback. Okay, got a reference to Axios documentation. Well, I mean, I guess let's try what we're using in this other app and then see if it works. And if it doesn't, we'll just adjust. So it's going to make that post request, and then that's going to return a promise. And then what we're going to do is .then response, and then we're going to just console.log response for now. And yeah, we'll just do that. And of course, for now it's going to fail, but I just want to make sure that it's at least trying to make that request for us. All right, so we don't even have that route created. So let's go ahead and create that. So route post files, and before we do that, we actually need a controller. So let's see here, PHP artisan make controller files controller. Oh, wrong folder. All right, and then we're gonna have a store request. And for now, I think what we'll do is just dump the request data. So this is going to take a request parameter, and then we'll do dump request all. See what we get there. All right, yeah. So post files is going to use the files controller class store, and the name of that is going to be files.store. I'm going to go ahead and import this file All right. Cool. So let's refresh. Select the file. Admin.files.store is not in your route list. Nope. Admin.files.store. There we go. Oh, okay, yeah. So we're not actually prefixing those names with admin dot. Forget about that. Let's see here. So it's just files.store. All right. So it at least made that request. Failed. Well, actually, no, it didn't fail. It did a dry dump. And we see here in our request, that is the file that we uploaded. So that's perfect. Now that we have this file being sent to our server, what we can do is we can save it. So, save uploaded file. Just close some of these tabs. File storage, file uploads. All right, and so Laravel does make it pretty easy. I mean, we could even chain a method on our request file to store it. The stores parameter takes in the path at which you want to store the uploaded file. So in web applications, one of the most common use cases for storing files is storing user uploaded files such as photos and documents. Laravel makes it easy to store uploaded files using store method on an uploaded file instance. Call the store method with the path at which you want to store the files. Okay, so that's like simple, but I'm wondering how do we actually name it? So when you store it, is it using the original name? There are a few important things to note about this example. Note that we only specify directory name, not a file name. By default, the store method will generate a unique ID to serve as the file name. The file's extension will be determined by examining the file's MIME type. The path to the file will be returned by the store method, so you can store the path, including the generated file name, in your database. Okay, so that's good. So we can use this method, and then whatever is going to return to that path, and then we can use that path when we save the file to the database. Perfect. And then as far as specifying a name, so instead of store, we're going to do store as, and then we can provide a, let's see here, if you do not want a file name to be automatically assigned to your stored file, you may use the store as method, which receives a path, the file name, and the optional disk as the arguments. Okay. And then the other option we have is just to use a storage facade. Which technically does the same thing, but I guess what's nice about using the storage facade is we can pass in disk, which I guess we can actually pass in the disk we want here too. But I think for most of the file operations that we're going to be doing, we're probably going to be using the storage facade anyways. So we probably want, probably want to use it. At this point, it doesn't really matter, and it's easy to switch from one to the other. Cool, and then my other question is, when you pass in the file name, looks like they're just passing in the user's ID here. I'm wondering if it automatically generates the extension for you. Guess let's try it out, kind of see what we get, and then we can adjust from there. So in Laravel, we can access files by using the file method, and then we pass in the name of the file. So in our case, we passed, I think it was just file in our form data. Yeah, so we set the file to file, and then file, and then we can do store as, pass in a path, which for now I'll probably just do media, and then we pass in the name. Actually, for now, we won't pass the name. We'll just do the regular store function, kind of make sure it stores things for us. Just item the path. And then before we go any further, we want to make sure that our file system is configured correctly. So right now, the default that it's using is the local disk. And what we actually want to do is use the public disk, which really uses, I think, the same thing it uses the same driver, but we're using that public path, and that public path is symlinked to the public directory. And then we actually have to make sure we symlink that. I think Laravel has a little helper. Yeah, PHP Artisan Storage link will link your public storage directory to the public folder. So you see here, the public storage has been linked to storage.public. Cool. So let's go ahead and try this out. Let's see what happens. Select one of these images. Cool, so that returned the path for us here. And let's look here in the storage folder to see if it's uploaded. Oh, there we go. There's that image. Perfect. So now what we want to do is we actually want to provide a file name for it. And my goal is to actually use the original file name. And so for now, I'm actually just kind of curious to see if we have to provide the extension or not. So I'm just going to do just something random, just to kind of see what the result is. And the other thing too here with this field, anytime you select something new, it's going to trigger that add input event, and it'll process that request automatically. So it looks like, yeah, we will need to pass in the extension there for that file name. Okay, see here, it got saved with the name, but no extension. And so we could get the original extension from the uploaded file. I think that's probably using just whatever is in the name of the file. But it looks like, that may not be the safest way to do it. And so Laravel actually provides this extension method here for determining the file's extension based on the file's MIME type. And so I think that's what we're going to do. So what we need here is the goal here is when we upload a file, we're going to use the slug method to slugify that file name. And we actually want to preserve the name of the file. And the reason we want to do that is, for things like SEO, it actually helps to have the name of the file. If the name of the file describes the image and you're using that image in your website, that actually helps, with SEO. But it's also, just from the user side, you have like an image somewhere, it's descriptive. It's easy to know what it is rather than having to look at this long hash, which doesn't really tell you anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in a file name variable that's yet to be created, and that's going to start off by us using str slug just going to do the file, just get the file here in as a variable. So file get client original name, I think is what we want. And then we want to append the extension. So dot, and then this will be file extension. All right, let's try that. Cool. So that took in our name, but I see here that there's PNG and then .png, so I wonder if it's actually using the so client original name probably gives us the full name with the extension. I was assuming it's going to give us just the part that has the name. Yeah, that gives us the full extension. So we're actually going to have to strip out the extension when we're generating the file name, and then we're going to have to add it back in. I wonder if there's actually a method on that file to retrieve just the name. Base name, maybe? Let's try that. Oh, so that's the base name of that temporary file, so that's not what we want. Let's see here. Get path name, just kind of curious to see what that is. Okay, so that's all that has to do with the temporary file name. Cool, well, it's fine. We can actually parse that out, and we can use PHP's there's a method we can use. Well, actually, I'm wondering if Laravel's facade has anything. It does, perfect. So we can use the file base name. I believe that's actually what we're looking for. Let's see here. Did I dump that? Oh, so, okay, so base name is just like the base name of the path. So that's just giving us the last part of the path. Okay, this is what we're looking for, finally. So this gives us just the name of the file without the extension. So that's what we need here. That's going to be the first part of our file here. So we're going to pass that over to the string slug method. And then we're going to append the extension. So I think we're thinking lock here. Perfect. So media, max room. Cool. So we have a slugified name here that's URL friendly, and the extension. And then so what we want to do is we actually want to save a reference of this file to the database. So we're going to have a database collection that's going to have all the files listed. It's going to have the path to the file, and it's going to have an ID. And so when we're actually selecting a file here on the form, when you select a file, it uploads the file, it returns an instance of that file object, and then what we're actually going to do is save the ID of the file to our form, and that's what's going to be saved in our collection item. So we're not really concerned about the path or anything. We just want the ID of the file, and then when we're actually trying to pull information about the file, we can just get that file from the database. Pull up the path name and whatever else we need. And so I think what we're going to do here is so we're going to have this file's database collection. Instead of name, I think what we're going to do is just path. So file.path, because that's what's going to be returned to us by Laravel. So we have the path here, and so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new model here, and I'm just going to copy one of our other models, call file, All right, and then what we will do is file create path. And this is going to return the file to us. So let's see here. Just do a quick refresh, select a new file, it's going to upload. And you see here, this is the response we're getting from our axios request, and this is the data in the response. And so it just kind of returns all the information on that file. All right, and I think what we want to do is probably want to scope that under a file object here. So now it'll be .file, and then that file is going to have all the information about our file here. You see here we have the ID, so that's what we're going to use to pass to the form field. So let's see here. Oh yeah, and then one more thing too is we want to make sure that files are unique. So when we're generating this file name, we want to check the database to see if another file has been uploaded with that file name, and if it has, we want to append a number to it. So the first one's going to have -2, second one -3, and so on. And so the way we're going to do that is so while what we want to do. So do while. The while is going to be like while file where path. Well, that brings up an interesting point here. Is if we're saving the path to the database, which currently we are, we're going to have to include that path if we're trying to do any kind of queries. So maybe what I'll do is actually save just the name of the file, because I mean we'll know what the path is. There's only going to be one path for these media files, so it doesn't really make sense to include the path in there. So here, instead of path, we're going to do name, and then what we want to do is file base name path. So while there is a file that has a name, file name exists, while that exists in the database, we want to generate a new file name. So the first one so it's going to run the first time. It's going to add that, and then what we'll do actually is we're going to create a separate variable for like the file base name. So then we can use that to kind of concatenate our file here. So we're gonna need some kind of like variable here for like the iteration that we're on. So with every time it does that check in a file that does exist, it's just gonna bump that up. And then that's gonna be included here. But the thing is, we don't want to include it on the first one. So maybe we have something like this. So file, so we set the file name here. And so instead of a do while, we'll do while do. So while that exists, what we want to do is we want to create a new file, and then we're going to append this -i, and then do an I++. So that's going to keep running, and it's going to increase every time. But we actually want that to start at 2. So the first one, if there's a duplicate, the first one's going to have 2, and then it's going to increment from there. All right, I think that should work. It's a little messy here that it's all in one. We'll extract that to a separate method here in a second. So yeah, I'm just going to select the first one here. I guess we'll just check in our database. All right, so that was the first one. Let's select another one. Same file, refresh. Okay, I'm not sure that actually uploaded. All right, because it didn't change. Okay. All right, so now that one has -2. So you see here, that was the first file we uploaded. Here's the second one. Now it has a -2. So if we upload that same file again, we should expect it to have -3. Refresh. All right, perfect. Cool. And of course, we upload a new one that doesn't currently exist. That one's just going to be, it's just going to contain the name of the file. All right. So we have that uploading, and then I think what I want to do is extract this into like its own function. So let's generate unique name. And then I like to have, well, first it's going to have to accept the file parameter here. And then I like to give my, whatever the function is returning. I like to call that result, so we know what we're working with there. Cool, so we get the file, we generate a unique file name, we store that file, it returns a path, we save this file to the database with the name of the file, and then we return that file to our, our UI. Cool, so now in our UI, what we can do is we can receive that information about that file, and then we can save the value of that image field to that uploaded file. So we have a response object here. And so the way it's going to work is, because we're using like a component here, we're going to have some kind of prop that we pass, maybe like on, we could even do on change, since this is a field. It's kind of what we would expect. And so we're going to take maybe I'm trying to think if we want to pass in the file, the full file, or just the ID. I guess at this point it doesn't matter. I think we'll just take the file ID, and well, even really the value, right? Because we're just concerned about whatever value is going to be saved on that form data. And so what we will do, once we have that value, we're going to call the props.onFieldChange, pass in the field, and then the value of that field. So what we're expecting here is on this image field, once somebody selects a file, our image field handles the upload. Once the upload is successful, it'll trigger this prop that we're passing on change, and it's going to pass in the ID of the file. So let's see here. So once we have the response, really all we need to do is do props.onChange and pass that response.data.file .id. This is going to be underscore ID. All right, let's see where that gets us. We're going to choose a new file, select one of these. We don't know if anything happened really. I guess we can save and then check the database to see if that item was, that field was updated. And it looks like it was. I mean, these are all IDs, so it's kind of hard to tell what's what. But I'm guessing this one, because it looks like an ID here, I'm guessing that's our file field. And anyway, I guess we can confirm that. So what is that, 52B? Yeah, 52B, that was the last uploaded file there. Perfect, cool. So I mean, at this point, it's showing what we want it to show there, or it's doing what we want it to do. Cool. So as far as uploading the files, I mean, that's pretty much set. You know, we are going to have cases where there might be an error, and I think for now, what we will do is just do alert error uploading file, and we'll just console.log that error. Just in case something goes wrong. Dot catch. Okay, and then I'm just going to simulate an error here, just put something random to make the request fail. Well, before we do that, I'm going to make sure we can load the page. All right, something random. So choose file, select the file until it fails, error uploading file, and then the error gets logged into the console as well. Perfect. So, I mean, you'll probably want better error handling for the user in the future, but that will serve as a temporary placeholder. The other thing we want to do too is, like, once an image is selected and it's successfully uploaded, and we've set the value of the form field to the ID of that image, we actually want it to show that image as a little thumbnail here. And the thing is, the only thing we're going to have about the file is the ID. And so what I think what I've kind of done in the past is I've created like this URL where, you know, you can do something like, you know, like files preview, and then you have the file ID. And what it does is it pulls that file information from the database, and then it kind of returns that file. Like not the information about the file, but like the file itself, so that you can like include it in the image tag. So you can do something like, you know, image source is equal to you know, route files.preview. You pass in the file.id to your route parameter, and then you know, once that gets resolved, it'll, you know, what it's going to show is the actual image here. And so I kind of like that pattern because it allows us to easily show a preview of the image with just the ID. We don't have to do anything extra. You know, our other option would be to kind of maybe create an endpoint that, you know, we just have like a simple files endpoint, and what that's going to do is just going to return the information about that file. So our response is going to be like, you know, ID, you know, whatever the ID of the file is going to be, and then we're going to have the name of our file, So some file.jpg, and then we can use that to pass into the image source. So that works as well. Either option is valid. This is easier. I think the only downside here is that you know, it may use more memory because it might be actually loading that file into the memory before it returns it returns it in the request, versus this is actually just making a request for that image. Technically, this would be like the better way to do it. I'm just trying to think if there's any downsides to doing that. And the only really downside that we're gonna have is if all we have is the ID to begin with, we're gonna have to make that extra API request to get that information about the file. Which isn't horrible. I mean, we're gonna have to make a request anyways, whether that's getting the file or having something like this where it like returns the file itself, so you can use that as a preview. So yeah, I think I'm in favor of actually going this path just because it's a little more future-proof, I guess. Cool. So the way this is going to work is image field is going to take in like maybe like a value prop, which is going to be like the initial value of the field. And so if there's a value set on that value prop, we will do we will show an image tag. So something like props.value and image source equals, you know, we're gonna fill that in a second. But because that value, and so where that value is going to come from is from our CRUD form here. So in our image field, we can do value is equal to you know, props.form data field.id. So that's going to pass in the ID of the image field, or it's going to pass in something that's like empty. If it's not empty, we can show that image tag. But the other thing too is we can't just show the image tag. We have to actually get information about the image. We have to know which URL to show here for this image. And so what I'm thinking here is we will have some kind of state that keeps track of the current file. So we can do like const I mean, I guess we can use file set file equal to use state. And by default, it's, you know, it's not going to have anything. So when this component loads, we're going to have an effect here, use effect. That's going to run whenever the props dot value changes. And so what that's going to do is whenever that changes, if you know, if we don't have anything for our props.value and we just return, maybe we don't want to return, we'll just do, yeah, if props.value has an actual value, that's where we actually get the information about the file. Otherwise, we're going to assume that that value is null or blank or something, and then we actually want to reset our file here. So we're going to set file to null. So here is where we're going to make a request to the backend to get information about the file. So that's, you know, we'll just do another axios request, get route files dot is it view? show, files.show. That's the convention. And what we're going to pass here is props.value. Then we take the response, and then what we're going to do is set the file to the response.data.file. And before we go any further, we're just going to console.log our file just to kind of see what kind of happens here. And we also got to make sure we set up our route here. So route get files file. Just be files controller show name files.show. So it's going to take in our file, and then really it's just going to return it. Return response, JSON, file. All right, so let's see if that'll work. Oh yeah, so that's an error because we just had that ... there for the source, but we'll fix that in a second. All right, perfect. Yeah, so this console.log, this is logging our file response there. So we upload something new. That file response is now different. So in our source here now, what we can do is we can provide the path to that image. So /images, and then this is going to be file.name. And this really should be if the file. So if the file is not falsy, then that's when we want to show the image. Okay, so it looks like it's working. It's getting that file information. Because remember, right now we're on the edit page, and so when we loaded this page, this field actually has a value here. It has an ID, and so it's actually making that request to get that file information. That's trying to show it. But what's wrong here is I think maybe our path is incorrect. And really, let's see here. All right, so I think what we forgot to do is we forgot to change this to public. That's why it's not loading. All right, and I do have I have the wrong URL in there. I'm using images instead of media, but I just want to make sure this is working first. And it is not. Let's see here. Well, I know that Laravel has a way to get a URL from the storage disk. So let's see here, storage, URL, just want to see what the result is. So storage, media, okay, that is what we had. It's in there, see it. So maybe the symlink is not working correctly, maybe because it's in a media path. Okay, so maybe it's actually not. Let's see here. File systems. So default file system is using public. But what does storage use? It looks like maybe it's not actually storing in the public disk yet. I want to see how, we can pass in explicit value for the storage. Looks like we can, we just pass into disk. So we'll just say we want to save it to public. Let's test that out. There we go. Okay. A little bit of a detour, but we got there. Okay, so let's see here. So that's the other part of it too. Like, I don't really want my front end to be concerned about trying to know what the path should be. My goal here is to just do something like, image source file.path, or maybe even something like file.url. And that's going to kind of take care of, like the backend is going to take care of what the URL is, so that our front end just does not have to be concerned about that. So this way, in the future, if we did change the directory or changed anything, it would already be working. And so, I think the way we want to do that is, so in our response here, we're going to have our file, of course, but in addition to like our file, we want to also include the URL for the file. And so we will do something like, probably something like public path, and then we pass in the path in our in the function call here. So that needs to return an array in order for it to be unpacked. Cannot unpack array with string keys. Well, that's a bummer. So in that case, we'll just do an array merge. All right, one more time. Better, we got a result. Let's see here, URL. So, okay, that's giving us the path. We want the URL, not like the path on the file disk. There we go. Sweet. Whew. So, yeah, as you see here, when it returns the file, it also includes, not there, over here, it also includes the URL. And, you know, we'll probably clean this up here in a little bit where, you know, maybe the URL is returned automatically when we do toArray on our file. So this way, even when we do the original response here, or anytime we return a file in a JSON response, it'll return that URL. And you know what? We can actually just go ahead and do that with function toArray. So the result is going to be our parent toArray method, and then what we can do is say result URL, and we can add things to it. So this is going to be asset this name, and we're going to go ahead and return that. All right, so then now we don't really need to do anything there besides just returning the file. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and save this just because the other image was not being saved in the correct place. So this way, our initial load should show that image, and it's not. So you see here now, it actually is returning that URL, but for some reason our image field here is not, it's not showing anything. So image field console.log file. So it looks like it's logging it. It's undefined. Let's console.log. Let's make a new one. Console.log props. Oh, let's just do all the props. So we have a value here. We do have an ID. So I think maybe this use effect is not running on the initial time. Yeah. No, it is. So it is working. Let's see if we can console.log the response, make sure we're getting what we're expecting. Okay, yeah, that's a problem because we're expecting response.data.file, but what we did is we modified this to just return the file directly, so we just have to nest that into an array. I think that should work. Cool, yeah, that's the initial image we have there. And I'm just going to go ahead and set a max width on that image field so that it doesn't bleed out onto the edge. Cool. Well, actually, really, you know what? We don't want that. We want like a small thumbnail, so I'm just going to do like a width of like I don't know, 220 pixels. There we go. That's kind of more or less what we're looking for. It's still a little big. And I'm going to wrap it in a div so this way it doesn't, it's not in line with the input. Perfect, cool. And so now I think if we switch this to a new image, yeah, you see here it loads the new one. Perfect, yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking for. If we save it, refresh here, yeah, so it loads. Cool, so that's really what we were after. So kind of the whole process here. So if we go to create a new page, we have an empty image field. Once you click to select that image, it uploads in the background, shows you a little preview. You know, you can of course replace that, change it to something else, and it'll show you what the current value is, which is nice. You know, you save it, and then it's gonna, you know, if there's a value here, it'll show it by default. And then same thing here on the edit page. If you updated that, it would show you the current value. Of course, if you didn't save this, you know, and you refreshed, it would go back to showing the old field because it's not persistent until you click save, even though the file is saved in the background. Cool. And then I think just one last thing that we want to do here is we want to add a little button here to remove the image. And so really what that's going to do is just clear out the value for that image field. And so here it's going to go under our image and it's going to go above our input, but it's only going to show when there's an image. So we can do it right under the image here. And so I guess I'm going to wrap our image in another div, and then we'll have, for now I'm just going to do like a regular HTML button. And really what that's going to do is whenever that's clicked, we want to pretty much clear out the value. And so when we select the new file and it gets uploaded, we're passing this like onChange, or we're calling this props.onChange method with the value that we want it to be set to. But when we remove it, we can just provide it in an empty value. So whenever somebody removes it, we want the new value of that form field to be just empty. So we'll do props.onChange, and the value we're going to provide is just null. And so what that's going to do here is it's going to call this onChange with the value that we provide, which is going to be null, and then it's just going to do a field change, set that value of that form field to null, and that should, you know, clear it out. So let's go ahead and test that out. So you see here we have an image uploaded. We also have this remove field. We click it, boom, it gets removed, and it did a page refresh because by default buttons have the type submit. So we want to make that type button. So here, if we select a new image, it gets uploaded, click remove, removes it. Cool. Of course, if we save that with the initial state here as well, remove it, save an empty value, refresh, it doesn't show anything for that field. Perfect. So that's really the functionality that we're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and remove all those console logs that I made. Keep that. Cool, yeah, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with this so far. Of course, we're gonna want it to look better in the future, and then there's still like maybe a few additional things we can do. One would be to, you know, when you click remove here, maybe we can send a delete request to the server so it actually deletes that file and we don't have a bunch of like files uploaded that we don't need. So delete file. When user clicks to remove image. All right, and well, that's really, I think, the only thing that I can think of for now, besides, you know, style changes. But yeah, so that's our image field. So let's just kind of recap what we did here. So we added this new image field to our form that when a user selects a new image, it makes a request here in the background to upload that file. It returns the response of that file to our component, and then our component passes a onChange event to the form in order to update the value of that form field to the ID of the image. That ID gets saved in a database, and then that's how we know which file it's associated with. So that's our image field. So that's pretty much it for that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna have we're gonna have another field here for images, and this is gonna allow the user to upload multiple images. So this is kind of, it limits you to only selecting a single image, and the images field will let you select multiple. And the other thing too that I just realized is the image field should actually restrict you from letting you only upload image file fields, but right now it's letting you upload anything. So restrict upload to images only. Cool. But yeah, anyhow, that's pretty much, that's all we're gonna tackle today. I'm happy with this progress that we made so far. Just go ahead and commit that. Push that out, and yeah. So yeah, next time we'll work on kind of completing some of these remaining tasks, and then we'll focus on the next few fields that we have. All right, well, I am out.